Welcome back to The Fight Game.
And welcome back to The Fight Game. And my next guest is a great friend of the show, Ryan McKinnell from SiriusXM. Ryan, I want to talk to you about professional wrestling, but now I've got to talk to you about the next big thing in the UFC, Bo Nickal. Are you surprised by how dominant he's looked on the Dana White Contender Series?
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest to a little bit. And listen, don't feel bad about the pro wrestling, because Bo Nickal was called out after his victory in the Contender Series that, maybe he's going to be doing some action in the WWE. He called out one of the Paul brothers and said, we can get it in the square and circle as well. So this is a young man, I think he's 26 years old, that is very astute and very aware of his money-making capabilities. But to his talent, to the way he's just washing people at a pro level, and the fellow that he beat, Donovan Beard, over the week, or earlier in the week, Damon, he was a champion in CFSC. Like, it's not an organization. Like, it's a good organization. This wasn't just some scrub off the street. And it's the way Bo Nickal puts everything together. You knew he'd have the wrestling. You knew he'd have the ground game. You knew he'd have the sort of the athletic prowess. But the fact that he's stringing it all together, the angles that he takes on the feet, how comfortable he looks in the stand-up, Damon, and then you saw the finish on Tuesday night, the roll-up into that arm bar, and how quickly he transitioned. He seems to be light years ahead of just about anyone I've ever seen in just 3 professional fights. It is extremely impressive, and you always want to watch the hyperbole, but I also at the same time have to be honest.
All right, and the UFC, they're not wasting any time with him, as they've already announced the next fight. They announced it today. He's going to be fighting at UFC 282 in December against Jamie Pickett. Now, Jamie Pickett, I do remember his last fight. He did unfortunately lose. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. But do you think that he's being sacrificed at the Bo Nickal altar, or do you think that this is going to be an actual competitive fight?
I think everyone's going to be being sacrificed at the Bo Nickal altar for the next about year. I don't think they're going to throw him anyone that he's not going to feast on. Like, that's how good this young man is. For those that don't know, 3-time national champion in collegiate wrestling, trained with some of the best in the world, Hodge Award winner. I mean, this guy is, in terms of blue chip prospects, coming out of also the American Top Team gym, where he's working with some of the best fighters in the world, past, present, and, really the future. It's beyond impressive. And yeah, Jamie Pickett's in deep trouble. I saw someone, Aaron Bronstetter from TSN up in Canada, tweeted early in the week that Bo Nickal would probably be a favorite against the majority of all the middleweights in the UFC right now, except maybe 3 or 4. And I really started looking at the rankings and where it sits. And again, the line is determined by the height. Vegas, you know this. It's determined by the bettors and the people that are approaching the window. But there are a lot of people, a lot of smart people that are high on Bo Nickal. And I don't think you're going to see him really tested for a couple of fights. I just don't think, first of all, you just can't give him top 15 and top 10 opponents right off the bat. I think there's a lot of us that think you could and he would still win, but you also have to be mindful of what this sport is and what an early loss could do and a setback could do, because we've seen it with other athletes. Now, I don't think Bo Nickal is that other athlete. I think he is a special type, one of one, generational, but time will tell. Everything is screaming that this dude is going to be a potential future champion, and the UFC is really lucked out, because Bo Nickal, it seems from like the jump, he's wanted to make money, he's wanted to be the best in the world, and he really only wanted to fight for the UFC. So this is a match we're going to be seeing for quite some time.
Again, we're talking to Ryan McKinnell here on The Fight Game on 1230 The Game, and someone that he also called out, Khamzat Chimaev. Do you think that maybe down the road, obviously not right now, but how do you think that would shape up? Because Khamzat, he's calling out Kobe. He wants Kobe next. So do you even think that Khamzat should even stay at 170, or should he be looking at 185?
I think Khamzat should look at either weight class. Listen, we don't even know if he can make 170 again. He's a big boy, and I mean, he missed weight so badly in that proposed Diaz fight that never happened, obviously, a couple weeks ago, that got shifted around because Khamzat came in 8.5 pounds over the welterweight limit. I mean, it was disgraceful. Now, it's what have you done for me now, business, Damon? You know that, and Khamzat is such a prospect that the UFC's not going to, slap him on the wrist too hard. So I think he's going to be able to kind of pick what he wants to do next. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people signing up to fight him. I don't think Colby Covington wants any of that smoke with Khamzat Chimaev. In fact, Damon, when I think about Khamzat Chimaev and the possibility of him, fighting a Bo Nickal, I get really excited because maybe in the last 10 years, I would say Khamzat is one of, if not the best prospect in terms of the way they looked early on in their UFC career. And then Bo Nickal comes after that. So it's like an idea of Khamzat and Bo Nickal meeting is so enticing because they're the two best prospects that have come along in quite some time. And I don't know. I mean, listen, Nickal's a middleweight, and he's a big middleweight. Khamzat's a welterweight, and he's a big welterweight. They can certainly meet at 185, down the road. If Khamzat, feels about going up to 185, that is a prospect match made in heaven. If I was the UFC, though, I would stay away from it unless it was for gold. It reminds me very much of when, Junior Dos Santos and Cain Velasquez were coming up as heavyweights in the heavyweight division, where you saw them and you knew that they were probably both going to be championship material. So just let them build, let them take out everybody else, and then when they meet, make it on the biggest stage possible. I think Khamzat Chimaev is absolutely going to be the welterweight champion if he can make, welterweight weight, and I still think he could be a problem and maybe the champion at middleweight. And Bo Nickal, he has future champion written all over him. It's a really good time right now in the middleweight, welterweight divisions if you're the UFC, because there's just a lot to like, and Khamzat and Nickal are a big part of that.
All right, and now we're going to move on to pro wrestling because there's a lot to talk about. I mean, haven't talked to you since I saw you over at the press conference for Crown Jewel where we saw Logan Paul. The match is going to happen in Saudi Arabia, him against the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. Now, going into that press conference, what were your expectations going in? Are you more excited for that match now that we know that it's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what my expectations were. It was it was interesting. I wonder how much of it was them actually promoting that fight in Saudi Arabia, and how much of it was Stephanie McMahon and Triple H wanting to go to Triple G Canelo 3. I think they wanted an excuse to be in Vegas, and they found themselves in our city, and they were having a good old time. But the match itself, I mean, you can't deny, Devon, as well as I do, the run that Roman Reigns is on right now. And yes, predetermined, and we all know what professional wrestling is, but you have to understand as we switch from MMA to pro wrestling, and there's some people probably there that don't always understand the business. The belt is given to the champion with the idea that the locker room is behind you. They're out there selling tickets at house shows. They're a commodity. Thus, if you're bringing in big gates, you're responsible for everyone else's check getting a boost. You're responsible for their kids eating a little bit better, going to a better school. You feel a lot of responsibility when you're the champion of the WWE locker room, and there is no question that Roman Reigns is that champion right now. What he is doing in the storyline that he's been embattled with for better part of 2 years has been absolutely some of the most entertaining storytelling that the WWE/WWF come on has ever done in my life. It doesn't come along this often, right? So I don't think Logan Paul is going to beat Roman Reigns. I think it's a stop on the way to WrestleMania in Los Angeles, which is hopefully a return of his blood, his family, his oos. Roman, I'm talking about his family is Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. There's been rumors that we're going to get The Rock and Roman in Los Angeles. If that happens, Logan Paul is a nice little stopover in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and it's going to do a ton of attention. You know how popular Logan Paul is in social media and on YouTube. And he's winning over WWE fans, pro wrestling fans too, Damon, because when that kid steps in the ring, that dude can work. You saw his frog splash at SummerSlam. Like the guy's got talent, and he's really good on the microphone. So I expect it to be a really good match, but I expect Roman to walk out as champ.
Oh, yeah. As we would say in the back, you're talking about Roman Reigns being the champ. Thanks for the house. And Roman Reigns, he is responsible for bringing in gate after gate of record attendance for the WWE. And something that I also want to mention, you're like, hey, people get to eat because Roman is champion. He is bringing in more fans. How soon do you think they're going to sell out of the honorary Oos t-shirt that Sami Zayn got? Because that was one of the best segments in SmackDown. I'm not going to say in history, but at least the past 5 years where I was wrapped in it of is Sami getting kicked out. Jay's looking a little too excited, but it's take that shirt off and he gets the honorary Oos t-shirt. Was that some of the best storytelling WWE's done in a while?
Yeah, I mean, they're finding that perfect balance of seriousness. For Roman is a part of an extremely traditioned, heralded family bloodline that, as I mentioned, Soul Man Rocky Johnson and Ada Maivia and Dwayne and then the Rikishi and just the list goes on and on and on. Appa and Sika, the Wild Samoans, like they're deep in the game, right? So you have this head of the table. He's linked with his cousins, the Usos. This heralded tag team right now in professional wrestling in the WWE, right? And you got this serious edge, and then you got this crazy Canadian ginger, Sami Zayn, out there trying to like butter up to him and throwing out, slang like betting on God, and he's just hamming it up. So you've got this ultra serious violent side and this comedic relief element that Sami Zayn is playing so well into. He really is a Swiss Army knife of enjoyment and entertainment for them. And yeah, man, the entire package. The laughs, the seriousness. I mean, in Vegas just a little over a year ago, we got one of the best stories of Roman Reigns' career. And keep in mind, this has been a 2+ year run that he's been on as this champion. He faced John Cena at Allegiant Stadium at SummerSlam. And that was, that was big-time wrestling. We know Cena, Peacemaker, Hollywood, Fast and the Furious. Dudes on commercials everywhere. He was the next in line from that Rock, Hogan, whatever lineage that Austin. Cena was that to an entire generation, and now Roman Reigns is becoming that. And what's interesting, Damon, and you know this, is he was kind of being shoved down fans' throats to begin with, and it was similar to like Rocky Maivia when he showed up, and then he had a transition to The Rock. Fans didn't like it. They didn't want to be told what to like, so they kind of rebelled against Roman Reigns. Didn't really take to him, and now we hit here 6, 7, 8 years later, and the fans can't get enough of him because he's leaning into the bad guy, leaning into being the heel, and he's just absolutely killing it. And it's a really exciting time to be a pro wrestling fan because obviously you got WWE doing this thing at a really high level, especially since Triple H took over. And then obviously you got AEW doing their thing and the independent scene in Vegas. Damon, you know that. We got the Women's Wrestling League out there. We've got FSW. I mean, we've got so many different organizations that are throwing shows all over town. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Ryan, something that you mentioned there, you said that Roman Reigns was being shoved down fans' throats. And a part of that reason was CM Punk, Phil Brooks. I haven't talked to you yet about the debacle that was All Out. And now that we've seen that, like, what's going to happen now in AEW? Jon Moxley, he's now the 3-time AEW champion. We know that MJF is going to be hot on his tail. But what are your thoughts about, hey, the fight with the EVPs to now Jon Moxley being the AEW champion once again?
Yeah, I mean, there's rumors out there, and there's been reports. I don't know how many people want to believe them or how much truth this is, but a lot of people out there that think CM Punk has wrestled his last match in an AEW ring, which might mean he's wrestled his last match ever in professional wrestling. And if that's the case, it's just going to be a really sad, odd end to what was a fun run for I think for an entire generation of fans. You could even call him a pioneer, along with like Danielson and a few others from that mid-2000s ROH era that really brought in a new era to the WWE. And I mean, he cuts the pipe bomb, the infamous pipe bomb promo at Thomas and Mack in 2011. He kind of changed the business. I was there that night. I mean, ESPN was getting headlines. And then he walked away. Right? He walked away for like 8 years, 9 years, went into the UFC, had, wrote comic books and, buddied up to Mark Maron and did a little Hollywood thing. And yeah, it's just the whole, I mean, for those that don't know, there's just a lot of controversy to this final match that Punk had in AEW back at All Out at the beginning of September. There was rumored to be a fight. There's fighting involved, chairs being thrown. Lawsuits are allegedly, happening right now. It's this wild scenario, or a police investigation. It's this wild scenario where I almost felt like CM Punk was asking for it. They threw one of those scrum pressers after All Out, and he went to the dais, and he basically called into question. I mean, listen, pro wrestlers aren't mixed martial artists, but they can beat up Phil Brooks. Like, he called out an entire locker room and basically said, if you want something or you want to say something to my face, I'm right in these hallways and you can come get at me, do something. And Damon, that's like essentially just going out the street of Fremont and looking someone in the eyes and being like, where you from? Like, it's just...
No, but Ryan, here's the difference, though. With CM Punk, I felt that it was the guy who, he got embarrassed a couple of times in the UFC, but he was looking at the Young Bucks like, but you can't whoop me. I'll take a lot of disrespect, but not from you.
Yeah, well, they can, and they probably did. You know what I mean? Like, just if you've seen CM Punk fight, I feel pretty confident that I could go into a room with my friends and bust him in the head and not worry about my health and safety too much. Like, he doesn't scare me. And he was talking super spicy on that microphone, almost like he called it down, like he called down the thunder and he wanted it. It was really odd. He buried the company, I felt like, in the process. He had Tony Khan, the owner of AEW and son of Jacksonville Jaguars owner Shad Khan, sitting there on the dais looking kind of confused. He respects him because he brought him over and he paid him the money to be there, but I don't know what to make of this. It's a really bad situation in AEW, but you know what? A lot of times in the history of pro wrestling, that is made for awesome storytelling. So you look at one of the most infamous rivalries of our lifetime, and a lot of fans out there listening, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, they hated each other. They did not like each other. And they worked some of the best matches of all time with one another, and obviously some of the more intriguing storylines of all time that we still talk about today. And of course, referencing the infamous Montreal Screwjob. But if AEW can figure out a way to make this work, I think they're going to do gangbusters, because you can take that real-life animosity and you can make it into a story, and then you put that a live microphone and you put it on Wednesday nights on Turner Broadcasting. Who knows what could come from that? So hopefully they can work it out, but you know what? It could also just be too far gone. And what a weird period. And it was a one-year run. It was all out to all out. It was Chicago to Chicago. Two events. I mean, it was separated by 1 year. And to think of everything that happened in that year and that he might not wrestle there again, it's really crazy to think about.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. I know you've got to run. This has been Ryan McKinnell from SiriusXM. Thank you so much. We're going to chat soon.
Thanks, Bob.